been a crazy fortnight as an Eagles fan, watching our last two results. The last two since Drew Jones returned from Lovers Island, of course. We look forward to the impending arrival of Rowan Jones, of course, into the Nest family. But Drewy's been away enjoying himself with his lovely fiancée. And in that time, Drewy, we had a 42-point loss to the Cats that we were kind of cock-a-hoop about. And then we lost by 10 points to North Melbourne and we're absolutely devastated. I guess that's life as a team in the bottom four. You do well against the the top teams and have an honourable loss and you're delighted, but then you lose the ones to teams around you and it stinks enormously, especially the manner in which we did lose it. It's been an up and down couple of weeks.
Certainly has. Nice to be with you, Garby. Can you tell us where you are right now, by the way?
Sorry, I just had to drop my car for a service. And now I'm walking back home, which is only 5 or 10 minutes or so. Don't have my AirPods with me. Left them in the car stupidly. But hopefully the audio quality is okay as I make my way back home.
No, it's good. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know how I said to you a couple of weeks ago, I love the way that you break down a West Coast performance. I almost don't want you to do that for the North Melbourne game because I think the general consensus for most people who watch the game is it's probably not an occasion that we want to revisit too much. Thought Bunbury looked great. Enjoyed the sort of community ground feel that the game had, and all the feedback having the Bunbury bash, it was quite positive. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough space for two TV broadcasters, so Fox couldn't actually do the game properly from there. But other than that, I think it was all fairly positive. And it was funny, wasn't it? I reckon it was almost a direct flip of the pre-season game where West Coast beat North, but the Kangaroos had the better of that game and probably deserved to win. So I get the feeling that ground's a bit quirky in terms of scoring ends and wind and conditions and things like that. But there were certainly periods of that Geelong game which were really positive. And then I think watching us on Sunday, that the optimism I got from that game was sort of dampened a little bit. Like, is that how you felt as well?
Well, I mean, the Geelong game, yes, there were a lot of positives. They blew us away late. That wasn't a true reflection of the game. You know, what I loved about that game is that we were looking really ordinary in the first 10 minutes or so, and so many occasions in the past where that's happened and we look off and a top team is having their way with us, we lose by 10 goals. Whereas we fought back in that game, kept our cool, and then matched them with ball movement on so many occasions until we just sort of ran out of half late on and Jeremy Cameron and other superstars took over, which was okay. We sort of took a lot out of that. I felt like the North Melbourne result, Drewy, is the kind of game that we won't see repeated for a long, long time. It's as bizarre a result in a game of Australian rules football as you'll see based on the balance of play. We should have been 6-7 goals up at three-quarter time, and it's not even a question as to what happens in the final term when the siren goes in terms of who wins. Like, it should have been so far beyond a game up for winning by the time it got to the final term. To put that into context, we barely touched the football in the last quarter. We got slaughtered. We still finished the game with 22 more inside 50s. We all saw that last quarter. We still finished with 22 more inside 50s for the game. It was dominant from us. We just couldn't finish. Now, there's that whole debate, do you deserve to win playing like that? And the argument goes both ways. Yeah, you don't take your chances, you don't deserve to win. But on the balance of play, of course we did. So I don't think we'll see that often again. We're not a terrible goal-kicking side. We were abhorrent against the Roos. I still think the positives outweigh the negatives considering the manner in which we dominated another team in the bottom four, right? So it's signs that we are progressing. It's just it sucks that we didn't get the 4 points to show for it because, in the manner in which the game was played, we should have.
Yeah, so 81 tackles, 23 tackles inside 50, 63 inside 50s to 41. Contested ball was about even. They got us in clearances pretty convincingly, which is probably not that surprising. And they just had a lot more of the ball, which again, with the game plan that we're executing, is also not surprising. So, yeah, I mean, we should have been off and away in the first half. You know, inaccurate kicking obviously cost us, as you mentioned. But, yeah, I mean, I just think it's symptomatic of where the club and the playing list is at, isn't it? Like, we're not professional winners, and that sort of shows, even though we're playing against another pretty ordinary team. We just couldn't put them away. And then, you know, when they finally started, they got the better of us in the last quarter. No question about that. They were much better as the game went on, and we just couldn't stay with them. But the damage should have been done a lot earlier than that. You talk about some of the positives from the game. Like, who are you thinking of specifically? And I know who you're going to start with. Harry Edwards.
Well, Harry was our best player. He was fantastic. He's been really good for a month now, and that really went to another level against Nick Larkey. He absolutely dominated him. He spoiled, but he took contested marks as well. He was best on ground for us by a long way, got the 5 coaches' votes, and just really happy for him because I thought he was unlucky to get dropped early in the season, but I like the way in which Minnie just wanted to send a strong message. Like, no, you have to defend in a different way if you are to be the leader of our backline. It's that serious. And he eventually has heeded that message, and he's playing fantastic footy now. And the majority of West Coast Eagles fans have come around in that sense. There's still some who don't see him being the future for our backline, and that's okay. I think some of the criticism he's copped is a bit silly. You know, just it takes me back to Darren Glass when he was coming through, and Eagles fans used to smash him. And God, I actually shudder to think what would have happened to Darren Glass's career if he played in the internet age. Maybe it wouldn't have worked out so well because he would have been the absolute whipping boy. It was a bit different back then. A lot of people wrote him off because he was still raw and he didn't have midfield protection in his first year or two. That's what happens for key defenders. You have to judge them in time. But you know, Harry's played close to 50 games now, and some people still think he's only played 2 or 3 good games, which is just not true. It's just not the representation of him. He's had some dips, of course. He's not the quickest defender around. He's got a long way to go, and there's no guarantee he's going to be a superstar. But I think we should be really enthused about what he's showing right now, and you can see why. Let me ask you this, Drewy. Would you rather have Tom Barrass right now in our back line or 24-year-old Harry Edwards with 3 future picks?
Yeah, I'm happy with the trade.
Of course we are.
Yeah, I'm happy with the trade. And I think the difference this week is that Edwards didn't just break even. He won his position. Like, he was an influential player for us in the game. So the evolution starts at the beginning of the year where he's essentially trying to play like Jeremy McGovern and Tom Barrass and intercept the ball and go for marks. And it's probably understandable because he's almost been brought up in the club through his formative years alongside defenders who can do that. And then, you know, McQualter has to do a bit of coaching, you know, makes an example of him by taking him out of the side, which I think we agree was a mistake with that game up against Hogan. And then he has to come back into the team. You know, there's a bit of drama there. But I think ultimately it's sort of worked out for the best. Like, he came back into the side. We could clearly see that there was a tweak in his approach. And then we've seen the benefits of it on the weekend because now he is flying for intercept marks at the right time. And then defending at the right times. And Nick Larkey kicked 70 goals 2.5 years ago. Like, he's a gun. So a tick for Edwards. I would say from that perspective, and you're totally right about what you're saying, young key defenders in struggling teams, bloody hard job. But also perhaps it's a tick for the types of clearances that North Melbourne were getting, even though they were clearing the ball. You know, they won the clearances. Perhaps they weren't as much out the front of the stoppage. Maybe there was a bit more pressure on around the ball. So that's a positive. I just wanted to ask you, there's a couple of things from the game. So the Bo Allen sub situation, which Andrew McQualter has subsequently addressed through his Channel 7 commitments. I feel for Bo, and I think it's clear that he's been mismanaged over the last couple of weeks. Would you agree with that?
100%, and Andrew McQualter admitted it. So Vinny's made a few mistakes, I think, to this point in the season. You've spoken about the Edwards one against the Giants. We know he's got some midfield mixes wrong in certain games, most notably against Carlton, and then a couple other games afterwards where he changed it all up. And the Bo Allen one is another, but it's not an enormous mistake overall, I don't think. He's still learning as a senior coach, and he's got a lot to juggle at West Coast right now as he tries to lift a rebuilding team. But he's doing a very good job overall. I think most Eagles fans are very calm about where it all sits with many. You look at the style of play that's coming in, the strides that are being made, the overall development of a lot of players. There's a few mistakes there, but you have to accept those. And so that's one of them. If Bo Allen comes on earlier, do we win the game? I don't think so. But he should have played more, and it's not really fair to him. And he will, I reckon, play the full game against Carlton, or at least start the game against Carlton this week. So I think we need to accept some of that with our coach, but also, when people are getting on the internet and just spreading a lot of bile, as people tend to do without any care in the world, as the keyboard warriors are, just maybe take things into account holistically. And overall, yes, our record's terrible, but you can see the improvement in our team without Elliot Yeo, Jake Waterman, Jeremy McGovern. And yes, McGovern might be going soon. Yeo hasn't played a whole lot. They're still the three best footballers on the West Coast Eagles list at the start of the season, but that is shadow of a doubt. Liam Baker's getting close to them at the moment. So you put those three in the team right now, and there probably are a few more wins alongside it. But overall, things are really positive. I think you just have to be a bit calmer about some of the mistakes that are being made, because that's natural for a rookie coach as well.
I think it's conceivable that if those three players had played every game this season, that could be the top three of our best and fairest. So that's a fair chunk to take out of a team. Just on the Bo Allen thing, there's just a few things that have just piled up. The way that it's been a slow integration into the team for him. Then these last 2 weeks, that from the outside, it's easy for us to speculate, but there seems like there's some hesitancy to bring him into the game. Like, should he be in the team if there's a trust issue, or do you think this is just, or is it just, do you take Minnie at his word that it's like I didn't pull the trigger fast enough?
I think it's that. I think it simply was a lapse of concentration from the coach in that sense. And
that should not happen, though.
It shouldn't happen. And he said it's a mistake. So you accept it. I mean, should his assistants be stronger and say, Minnie,
yes,
you've got to bring the sub on? Yes, they should be, right? But ultimately, that lies at the foot of the head coach. And so it's a mistake from him, and he has to own that. As to why he's not playing, look, he was ill early on in the season. I think for me, it's just a positional thing. Like, they don't view him as a midfielder just yet. I think we all think he'll be that at some stage. He's not quite a winger. He's a halfback at the moment. That's his position. But we're pretty stocked in that sense, right? So, Duggo's our captain playing back there. Liam Baker's doing a great job at the moment, as we know. Tommy Cole's in good form at the moment, right? So he's holding his own, keeping his spot. Obviously, Ruben's gone back there. There isn't an obvious place for him at the minute, and there probably will be this week, because they'll make it work. Be it someone pushes up to the wing, maybe Jaden Hunt has a rest, or maybe Hutch goes out. Didn't think he was great against North, mainly with his skills. And so they find a place for Bo Allen this week. But I'm not sure there's been an obvious position for him at the moment, although he should have played a bit more, as the coach has admitted himself.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I find it's slightly concerning that we don't have
Fair enough.
We don't have a spot for him. We've also just drafted a halfback flanker who's probably going to play this week. Anyway, we'll get on to McCarthy in a second. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was Tyrell Dewar playing in the back line, who he seems to have been slotted in back there at the expense of Ryan Marrick, who's sort of pushed a bit further up the ground. What have you made of that change? Because I think I had viewed Marrick's season as positive, but I don't know if that's skewed by the fact that I think about him from a fantasy football perspective. And that's actually a serious point that I'm making. I know, like, it's sort of funny, but it's like I sort of have talked about him in a fantasy perspective so far this year. So I view his year as positive, but am I looking at it through sort of a fantasy lens?
Potentially, and I'm the same as you. I've got him in a league, and so, yeah, I'm like, he's going all right. Maybe I'm not looking at some of the errors he's making. I don't think those errors are severe, though. I like the way in which, even though he makes the odd mistake with the ball, which is going to be natural when you are entrusted with so much of the football in the back half, he does look like he's confident. He looks like he's happy to have that responsibility of being a distributor down back. I think he works really hard. He's got good pace. He can obviously play a little bit taller. He's passionate about winning his position. I think Ryan Marrick has a lot to offer this team. That doesn't mean that his place in the side is secure. And with Bo Allen, as we mentioned, more deserving of game time and McCarthy coming through. So that's healthy. And the players like him and even Tom Cole, a premiership player, an experienced player, says he doesn't feel comfortable and never has. So that's all healthy all up. And if he loses his place, I think we'd go, all right, well, yep, you maybe have to cop that because of the pressure coming on. But I still think he has a lot to offer our team. So I'm not someone who believes that he's not necessarily part of our future.
And then Tyrell Dewar. So
yeah,
I think we've almost seen him in all positions so far this season. And Minnie's kind of talked about the fact that he wants him in the team. They're just trying to find out what the right spot is for him. So over the season, he played really well against Brisbane earlier in the year. Like, he's had a few games where he's been good. He's been out of the side. What do you think has been the role that's impressed you most from Dewar?
Hard to know. Like, I see why they play him down back for a bit of that pace out of defence, but the gut feel right now is Tom McCarthy's maybe a better option, just because that's his 100% role, and he's just, that's my role as a footballer. He's not going to be much else other than a hard-running halfback, whereas Tyrell may want to play a bit more wing, maybe feels a bit more comfortable at half forward. He's got ability. He adds a lot to our list, but it's hard to know just where he sits right now in terms of our best 22. I think we've said this for a couple of years now. We're kind of comfortable with him at halfback, kind of comfortable on the wing, kind of comfortable half forward, right? So it's hard for him to nail down a spot when that's the case. He hasn't made, I think is the best way to answer this question, Drew, he hasn't made any one of those positions his own just yet.
Yeah, I think this continues to evolve. It's clear that he is going to be good enough to be in our team. We just haven't worked out where that is yet, and I think that's fine. So I guess we're in agreement this week that McCarthy will come in. In my view, Marrick's shift out of the back six has been to make room for McCarthy to come in. So my assumption would be that after 2 games in the waffle, this is the perfect week for him to play. And then you've got the bye off the back of it, and then it's like you get your 1 game, have a bye, and then you can assess going forward. But my expectation would be that he would play. Do you agree?
Yeah, not as bullish on it as you are, but I could see him coming in after another good waffle performance. I think Bo Allen comes in. I think Clay Hall should play this week because Carlton have a very strong on-ball division, mainly with Cripps and Hewitt as ball winners. We just need another grunt player in there. Now, Clay Hall's not the most polished performer, but he can win it. And we are short a pure ball winner in the midfield. We have been for a little while. So I think it's time, considering his waffle form, for him to come into the side and just try and win that football. And you say, Clay, don't worry about disposing of it, mate. Just get it and get it out to others. You know, if you have 20 disposals and 17 of them are handballs, that's okay. And you have 8 tackles. That's his role, I think. And then I think Bailey Williams has to come in this week. I think he's been unlucky not to play the last 2. We all love Archery. I mean, he's a huge talent. But Jack Williams has been better than in the last 2 weeks, and he hasn't necessarily done enough. It was a bad miss early on against the Roos to hold his spot when Bailey was in good form and has maintained that in the waffle when he was unlucky to be left out against North. So I'd like to see Bailey come back in along with Clay Hall and then Bo Allen probably. And if there's a 4th change, then it's probably McCarthy.
Yeah, I think that they'll drop Archery this week. I think that makes sense for Baz to come in his spot. I think Job's kind of warming up, probably not quite yet, but his debut is probably not too far away as well. But yeah, I'd love to see.
Would you rest Jaden Hunt this week? Manage him? I mean, like, it's kind of pseudo dropped, pseudo just have a break because you're not playing that well and you're slightly older.
Yeah, apparently Tom Cole's got tight hamstring, so he might come out as well. But yeah, you could flick I don't have a strong view on that necessarily because I just kind of know like Jaden Hunt's just going to run 17 kilometres and dig in for us no matter what. But my view is that this week you have to find a spot for Bo Allen in the 22. So if Jaden Hunt is the one that has to make way, or if it's Cole or, whatever.
Hutch maybe. Might be Hutchinson.
Yeah, could be Hutch. He hasn't been as good the last couple of weeks, no doubt about that. Okay, so Ryan Daniels has done some work the last few days, and I wanted to ask you on your view about this. So I heard him talking about how he thinks Erasmus is rated as that number one young midfield target, which will be able to acquire this player for a reasonable price, as opposed to going, top of the range. So Erasmus and Sheldrick are the sort of couple of names that are being thrown around. Where does that sit for you? Because I know that you are a fan of Sheldrick.
Love Sheldrick. Will Phillips as well from North is doing very well in the VFL, but can't get into their team.
Doesn't excite me as much.
Fair enough. You'd probably have a closer eye on him than I would. I'm a massive Sheldrick fan. I think he is just a better version of Clay Hall. Similar type player in that he's hardworking. He's a tough nut. He wins the football. Not a great user of it.
So just on your point with Sheldrick, I just wanted to ask, did you think in the last couple of weeks it's felt like Dean Cox has expanded his role a little bit, because he's got away from that sub-vest and now he's not just inside, he's doing a little bit of outside stuff too?
Yeah, so Goulden being out's opened that up. Taylor Adams is not really a required option for them at the moment. And then Mills coming back after his injury woes. I just don't think he's necessarily a fixture in the midfield. He's used a bit more all over the place. So there's a spot that's opened up for Sheldrick, and he's taken that. And I think they view him as a part of their team moving forward. So it may be harder to prize him away. Erasmus, I think we all like the potential of. My concern is, would Freo be willing to give us a first-round draft pick and watch him potentially flourish under their noses and embarrass them? I just think they'd prefer him, if he's going to go, to another club and not the team that could, really leave them red-faced if he becomes the player that they thought he would be when drafted.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So there's always going to be that thing in the background where Erasmus should have been a West Coast Academy player, but then we wouldn't have got him anyway, with the way that they changed the academy rules. So there's always that feeling with Erasmus of, what could have been. And I wonder if that plays a role in West Coast's interest in him. And his last few weeks have been really good. I think he's an improving player. I think it's now really interesting, Garby, because Erasmus has been given this opportunity the last few weeks with Freo to shine a bit more in the midfield. I think that game against GWS was certainly the best game of his AFL career, but they've got guys coming back. He's going to get probably squeezed out of that mix. If it's not this week, then it could be in the next couple of weeks. And then he probably falls back in the pecking order. I think if he's really honest with himself, he should leave, and he doesn't want to do a Dev Robertson, and sign that contract and then miss out on playing footy for 2 years. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like because we have those ties to Erasmus, is there going to be this pull from the Eagles to try and get him over and get the best out of him? But just on Neil, if we had Erasmus right now, Garby, where would he be in our midfield pecking order?
Yeah. I mean, there'd be a spot for him, I think. I think he'd be playing. We're a couple of proper midfielders short, and we need some midfield reinforcements. And a couple of youngsters would be quite handy. So our number one on-ball division is obviously, remove Yo from it for now. It's Hewitt, Harley and Hoff. That's probably our best three right now. And then we've got Brockman and Ryan floating through. I would say instead of them spending as much time in the midfield, Erasmus goes through there and they just spend a little bit more time forward and aren't required to pinch hit as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if we have Erasmus come to the club over the off-season, and let's assume that Elliot Yeo is fit for round one, I still think even with Yeo back in the mix, Erasmus is still, a part of our midfield rotation. And I think that starts to look quite interesting when you've got Ryan and Brockman and him rolling through there. And ideally, like, we don't know what Reed's tank's going to be like and how big a chunk of midfield time he'll be able to play. But it starts getting quite funky. And I kind of like the fact that if we did get Erasmus, we've skipped over the initial years. Like, he's done his time in the waffle. He's learnt how to play at a high level at Fremantle. He gets a taste of it, and then hopefully we get the best out of him. But, yeah, you're right about the stumbling block of the local rivals. Doesn't happen too often, does it? So it would be a big effort for us to actually get into the club.
I'm just not sure he's a pure midfielder. Like, we don't quite know what he is yet. He seems like more of an outside player. Can he run on the ball, win the hard ball, and use it outside? I mean, that's what you expect from first-round draft pick midfielders.
Yeah. I'm
not quite sure he's that player. I'm not quite sure he's enough of a ball winner, and maybe that's why he hasn't played enough at Freo. And if he's not, I don't necessarily think we need him, because we have some of those players emerging, and we need someone who can do a bit of both at the moment. And Sheldrick's not the most polished, but if we're going to preference one or the other, I'm preferencing the ball winner all day, because that's where our real problems lie.
Well, I would just like both.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they'll go for both, but that's what I would be doing. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because look, it's tough for Erasmus. He's got Sarong, Brayshaw, and Young, who are all guns, and then he's got a dual Brownlow medalist who's trying to get back to full fitness coming through the waffle. Like, there's a lot going on at Freo, and then they throw in Wagner as a tagger, working through there, and like even someone like a Will Brodie who's had, an exceptional season in the waffle, he can't even crack in. So there's just so many barriers in front of Erasmus at Freo, which just don't exist at West Coast. So a lot of water to pass under that bridge, Garby, but it was interesting just to hear some trade things thrown around. Sounds like you're ranking Sheldrick above Erasmus. I've probably got him pretty even at this point. Let's see how it plays out. So Carlton Sunday night, what are you thinking?
I think we're a chance. I think it could be, if we push Geelong all the way at Optus, why not the Blues? And, at our very best, we can potentially beat them. The concern is if Curnow and Mackay both play, because then it maybe stretches our back line a little bit. And also the midfield. I think they've got too many ball winners for us right now. Chera, Cripps, Hewitt, Walsh. I just worry about our ability to go with them in there. But if Flinney and Basby comes in, have really big games, maybe we can make something happen. I think it's going to be one to get excited about. I think it could be similar to the Geelong game, and who knows, maybe even a little bit better, Drew. I don't think an upset's out of the question.
I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait for this, just to plonk myself down on a Sunday night and watch the game. I'm really looking at, I was there live for the gather-round game, which was, the midfield absolute debacle that we had against the Blues. I just think it's a really good test for Mini and the players to just use that as like a marker and be like, we can't have that happen to us again. So yeah. I'm hoping for a really strong response from the midfield. And then, it's pretty hard for us to contain Charlie Curnow. He's had his way with us over the last few years. If Harry Edwards does get the opportunity to have a crack at Curnow, that's like a really good measuring stick of how far he's come. So I think there's a lot to look forward to.
I'm excited. I think we can push him. I like the podcast the Eagles did recently where before the Geelong game, Harley and Oscar were talking, and they were talking about beating the Cats. They were saying, why not an upset? I think we're going into games right now thinking we can knock this side off. And I think they'll be hurting after the way in which we gave it up against North. And maybe, just maybe, it'll be a little bit of an upset for us, and that'll spur us on. I think we're going to be in this one. I think we're a silly chance, at least.
Yeah, should be a cracking contest. Can't wait to bring McCarthy into my fantasy side too.
Good stuff, Drewy. Thanks, mate.
All right, mate. Chat soon. Go Eagles.
Ciao, ciao. Go Eagles.